welcome back to my channel, Patronosaurus Reads. I'm Katie, aka Patronosaurus, and I read, and welcome to the worst books of 2019. So, in my disappointing and surprising lists, which you haven't seen, I will link in the places, I made 10 of each because I feel like I'll always be able to think of more books that disappointed me and more books that surprised me. But for this video, I wanted to go with the worst of the worst. So I wasn't going to list 10 books just to list 10 books. So the good thing about this video is I only have 4 books to talk about because there were only 4 books I felt this year that were truly, really, really bad. So let's get into it. So my number 4 worst book of 2019 was This Lullaby by Sarah Dessen, which follows a teenage girl named Remy whose father was a musician and then he walked out on her and her family. So she has sworn off musicians forever and she's never gonna date one or be friends with one or anything. And then of course she meets a boy who is in a band and they strike up a relationship. And the thing that bothered me about this book a lot was that the boy, Dexter approaches her and tries to get her to go on a date with him, and she says no, and then he doesn't respect her boundaries at all, and he just keeps on hounding her every single time he sees her for like weeks until she finally agrees to go on a date with him. And that is very much that gross rom-com movie trope. Like, the moral of the story is, fellas, if you harass a woman enough, she will go on a date with you. No, I hate that. That's not a healthy way to start a relationship. It's not a healthy way to be in a relationship. And so, of course, the story reflected that. I didn't think that they treated each other well at all. I didn't love the relationship. And it was overall just kind of a mess. And I think I'm really done with Sarah Dessen, even regardless of the drama that she caused on Twitter earlier last year, like a few months ago. I just don't think that I like her writing anymore. And so I think I want to let the memories of me enjoying Sarah Dessen stay happy with like 12-year-old me where they belong and not let adult me ruin it. So I think I'm just not really going to read her books anymore. There's so many more authors that are doing young adult romantic contemporaries well and much better than Sarah Dessen. And the number 3 worst book of the year was The Lying Game by Ruth Ware, which was bad because it was boring. If you're writing any kind of mystery or thriller, there should be no point in the story where I feel like it is all just mind-numbingly dull. And that is exactly how I felt the whole time reading this book. Like, I could not have cared less about any of the characters, the mystery that they were trying to solve, their horrible interpersonal relationship. But I didn't care. It was not written in a way for it to be compelling because every single character was unlikable. And I could tell that they were all supposed to be, but that doesn't make it better. Like, for me to enjoy a book, there has to be at least one person that I'm rooting for. Like, no one was interesting. No one was relatable in any way. They were just awful, and it was boring. And when the big reveal came about at the end of the mystery, I was just like, okay. I really couldn't have been bothered. I didn't care. And it was so frustrating to read this book that is buzzed about so much, that so many people love Ruth Ware, and I really didn't like it. I think that each of her books gets progressively better because I have read The Death of Mrs. Westaway and The Turn of the Key. Well, I didn't love The Turn of the Key, but I really liked The Death of Mrs. Westaway, and there were a lot of things about The Turn of the Key that I did like. So I think in approaching her backlist, I will probably brace myself for the worst, but then when it comes to her new releases, I will keep hoping that they will get better and better. My number 2 worst book of the year was Crashing the Alist by Summer Heacock, which is a contemporary romance about this woman who, what is she doing? She gets hired to like clean out some old storage units, and in one of them she finds evidence that a very famous actor was once employed by an escort service. And somehow, through some ridiculous means, she gets his phone number, but she calls him when she's like drunk and tells him that she has it, so he thinks that she's threatening him. And it's supposed to be like an enemies to lovers type thing. But for that to be successful, the enemies do at some point have to actually go into being lovers. And they kind of didn't. They just kind of treated each other like shit the whole time, especially the guy. This famous actor who was very obviously a stand-in for Benedict Cumberbatch, by the way. His name was Caspian Tittleswitch. And it was so obviously essentially like a reader insert fanfic of Benedict Cumberbatch. And it was god-awful. He treated the main character so terribly. He never gave her a chance to explain herself. And when he finally did, she was trying to apologize. She was in tears, and he did not care. And again, this is another book that is just not an example of a healthy relationship. And I get that not every book is supposed to be, but I think this one was. And I did originally rate it 2 stars. But upon thinking about it and how angry it made me and how ridiculous it was in a bad way, not in like a fun, campy way, I lowered my rating to 1 star. Like, I could not, in good conscience, leave it at a 2 stars. All right, friends, it's time for my number 1 worst book of the year, which was 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, which I still can't believe was as bad as it was, because I love The Hating Game. I don't even know where to start. So when 99% Mine first came out, lots of people who were reviewing it said that it was not as good as The Hating Game. So I attributed their like extra low ratings to them just not being prepared for it, not being as good. So I told myself, I was like, I'm prepared for it to not be as good as The Hating Game. Like, I'm ready. It'll all be fine. It still might not be a 5-star read, but I will enjoy it. And I did not. It was really bad. The whole concept is the main character, Darcy, and her brother inherit their grandmother's house, and they hire their best friend from childhood to be in charge of the renovations. And Darcy's had a crush on him like the whole time. I could tell that Sally Thorne was trying to write in like some of that tension that was so good in The Hating Game, but it just was not working. I think because Darcy was so horrifically unlikable, I hated being in her brain. Like, hated it. I did not enjoy any part of the reading experience. And it was, again, another case of people just treating each other really badly, and it being held up as this like, yes, this is romance, this is love, this is great. And it wasn't. And I think this book really called attention to some of the problems with Sally Thorne's writing, especially of her using like really weird turn of phrases that don't really make sense, and a lot of the timelines being really confusing, and just jumping from thing to thing to thing and not really having good transitions. When I reread The Hating Game after reading 99% Mine, I could notice those things more. So even though I still enjoy The Hating Game, I feel like 99% Mine like maybe ruined Sally Thorne for me, ruined The Hating Game, because now I notice those things that maybe I noticed them before, but it didn't seem like that big a deal. But because it's magnified so much in my brain from 99% Mine, I don't enjoy The Hating Game as much as I once did. And that is very sad because I love that book. So especially because 99% Mine made me not love one of my favorite books as much, it gets the fantastic title of being the absolute worst book that I read in 2019. All right, friends, so that was it. Short, sweet, and to the point. I'm glad that I only had 4 books to talk about. I hope that that's the highest number that I ever have to talk about in one of these videos. I would hate to have a year where I have like a full 10 books to talk about. That would be horrible. Please let me know what you think of any of these books. If you agree with me, like, please let me know. Let's talk about it in the comments. Let's have an outlet for our rage and frustration at how bad these books were. Follow me on all my social media. That'll be linked down below. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. That's what YouTubers say. I'll see you guys next time.